my name's Ronia Dininno, and I work for Ammanford Contractors as a quantity surveyor. But I didn't start off that way. I started off as an apprentice bricklayer, where I was working for a small local company. And actually, during a speech that I was giving to girls who were considering a career path in construction, I actually got scouted from Ammanford Contractors to start an apprenticeship as an engineer. And that's where I would say my life shifted from having a job to having a career. So I was really young, I was only 17. And at the time, I was on a really low wage on my bricklaying apprenticeship. And they offered to double my money for an engineering apprenticeship. So having really little information on what I was getting myself in for, I decided just to take the chance and just to go for it. And I think that's something that, as we get older, we tend to lose a bit of our self-confidence, and we tend to doubt ourselves a little bit more in terms of what I've seen in comparison to my male co-workers, is that if I were to read the CV, or if I were to read the job description, and I were to read everything that they said that they wanted in a candidate, I feel I would doubt myself more than my male counterpart, because I think women are slightly more self-aware. They tend to doubt themselves a little bit more, and they tend to be juggling a lot more as well. So I don't know if any of you have children, but I started my career child-free. It was quite straightforward. I put everything into it. I trained up as an engineer. I worked my way up to a manager. I actually helped deliver the roundabout scheme, which is just down the road from here. And then I unexpectedly became pregnant, and my whole life changed. And that's when I had to alter my whole career to suit being a mother. It was really hard, actually, because I was quite conflicted. I was quite torn. I was 21 at the time, so I wasn't sure how I was going to make that change. But I was really lucky that my company were really supportive. Ammanford Contractors sort of helped me change what I was doing. So I decided that a hands-on sort of job on site wasn't going to work, because I'd need to work full time. And I decided that I wanted to be home with my children as well as having a career. So I needed to try and find a balance. So now I work 3 days a week as a quantity surveyor. It's a much more flexible role. And it's allowed me to find a little bit of a balance, which I think is really important, because I think it's easy to stand in front of a group of women and pitch having a career or pitch getting back into work. But I think there's so many other factors that people who are looking to get back into work have to consider, even if you don't have a family. I just think it's not as straightforward as just entering the workforce. That it's about finding something that really suits you and is actually going to work for you. And just because something works for you right now doesn't mean that you're not going to have to adapt it further down the line. So I think that's mainly the point that I want to bring across today, is just because you start somewhere doesn't mean that's where you're going to be in the middle, and doesn't mean that's where you're going to be at the end. So for me, I started and I was working 60-hour weeks. I was really invested in my career, and it brought me so much confidence. It turned me into the person I was. And then when I had children and I went on maternity leave, I was so nervous as to how I would reintegrate back into the workforce. I just wasn't the same person that I was before. And I was really, really worried. And it was such a big step. And I was so lucky that my bosses, actually, although they are all male, I work in a really male-dominant industry, they were really understanding. And I suppose we forget sometimes that people have wives or partners and children themselves. So I think sometimes it's very easy to see a company that employs hundreds of men and see it as a male-dominated company, which it is. But those men have women in their lives as well who have probably been in the same situation. So they were really, really helpful. And I sat down with my boss and he said, what do you want? And I said, well, I want to keep my career, but I want to maintain flexibility, and I want to be able to pick my children up from school. I don't want them to spend their entire lives in childcare. And my kids do go to childcare. I had to drop my son off to breakfast club this morning. He had a massive tantrum. It was horrific. He must have known that I had somewhere to be today. And he must have known I was nervous, I'm not sure. So I'm not saying it's not hard, but for me, I think that having a career has brought me a lot of confidence back. So when I was a stay-at-home mother for the year, I was actually on maternity for nearly a year and a half with my holidays and everything. I felt that I did lose part of my own identity. I was a wife, I was a mother, and it felt like a full-time job. And I thought, gosh, how can I take on, after having my second child, I thought, how can I take on going back to work on top of everything else I have? But I think it's given me a really nice balance. So on the 3 days that I'm working, I really miss my children. And when I come home in the night, I make an effort to spend quality time with them. And on the days off then, I really do appreciate them. Whereas I was a full-time mother in the middle of the pandemic with a toddler and a newborn. And sometimes it was hard to appreciate how lucky I was and what I actually had, because I just felt trapped in never-ending sort of 24-hour, 7-day-a-week cycles. Didn't have a lunch break. Didn't get to do anything for myself. I wasn't putting my makeup on in the morning. I wasn't doing my hair. I wasn't wearing anything that wasn't pajamas, really, or just tracksuits. And on my days off, I'm trying to clean my house and juggling things. I am in my tracksuits and my hair is scraped back and I look absolutely nothing like I do today. But I think it's really nice and it's really good for me just to get out of the house 3 days a week, to put some makeup on, to put some nice clothes on, and to go and sit with other adults. So what I would say is, as well as obviously the financial rewards of working, for me it's been really good for my mental health, actually. And I didn't realise how important it was for my mental health until I took a year and a half out. And that's when I knew that I did, despite the juggling it would involve, I did want to work as well as be a mother. And I'm really happy now that I feel I've struck a better balance. Also, I feel it's given me financial independence within my own life, my own marriage. I feel it brings me a sense of pride to be contributing into the household earnings, to have money to take to my children, to do the things that I want to on the days that I'm not working. And I always thought that when I became a mum, I always thought that I couldn't envisage not being a career woman. But once you have children, it just changes your life so much. And I always thought that I just work 5 days a week. And I'm so glad that I realised that you can actually change your ambitions. You can just go through your life and see what's going to suit you at the time and do the absolute best you can to make that happen. So it may feel really daunting right now if you're someone who's looking to get back into work, whether you've had a long time out, a short time out, maybe you're not sure what you want to do. But I'm part of a friendship group who, the majority of them either took maternity or just stopped working until their children went back to work full time. And now the group has actually all started going back to work. And I have seen a massive change in all of the women. It's not just me who felt like this. I feel their sort of self-confidence levels have risen. They've all gone into different industries. Some have gone into care, some have gone into education. I'm in construction. And actually, out of all of them, although I work in one of the only industries, out of all my friends, I'm the only one in a male-dominated industry. I actually think that I have the most flexibility and that I actually have the most support, ironically, which you wouldn't really assume. You'd think that people working maybe in care or in education, they'd have more flexibility than I would, but that's really not the case. So I think construction is one of those industries where you can start right at the bottom and you can work your way up without having to fund anything. So when I started, my company paid for my course. I was on a low income. I had my own place. I was 17. I would have never ever been able to afford to pay out for a course. And I felt really grateful that I had that training for nothing. Also, it pushed me a little bit because I needed to get transport to get there. I had to catch trains, buses. That was really draining, actually. I found that really hard. And it really pushed me to save my money, pass my test, buy a car. all things that I thought I was doing for my career, which they have massively aided my career, but actually now they're just really nice to have in my personal life. Like on the weekend, I took my children to the dinosaur park at Tenby. It's got really poor connections, by bus or train. You wouldn't be able to get there otherwise. And I'm really glad that actually through working for Alan Griffiths and through training and through having to do all of these things, it's actually, I didn't even realise it because I've been there 8 or 9 years now. It's just built up, and every piece of the puzzle now fits to where I am now. And I suppose if I were to give this talk in 10 years' time, when my children are older, or in 20 years' time, maybe I'd be saying something completely different. But this is where I am right now. And I just think that it's so daunting to think about changing what you're doing. And I've done that once when I changed from being a bricklayer to an engineer, again when I changed from being an engineer to a manager, and again when I changed from being a manager to a quantity surveyor. And I doubted myself for a while as to whether or not I should just be staying course, or whether it was the right decision to make these changes. But looking back, I'm really pleased that I have, and I'd say that's the main message that I want to get across today. You've got to find something that suits you now, and don't be afraid to put your hand up if it doesn't suit you further down the line, or if you decide that you want to make a change. And changes are so scary, but in my opinion, it's just worth taking the risk. Thank you.